Welcome to the I'm Christopher Clark, and I'm traveling the world exploring its true treasures, UNESCO World Heritage Sites. This time, the Middle East awaits with its relics of ancient global empires, its magnificent palaces, mosques, and legendary public squares. My journey will take me to Isfahan, Persepolis, Tehran, and Yazd in Iran. But first, I'm heading to Jordan, into the dramatic desert of Wadi Rum, and to Petra, the ancient Nabataean city carved directly into the cliffs. Wadi Rum is breathtakingly beautiful, far more than just a simple desert. It's a stunning spectacle of stone, sand, and light, in a place where time seems to have stopped. This is the unforgettable landscape of Wadi Rum. For 12,000 years, the Bedouin people and their distinct culture have called this place home. What remains today of that incredibly long history? That's precisely what I'm eager to discover. These imposing desert cliffs reach up to 400 meters in height. The local Arabs refer to them as Hizmar. When the sandstorms blow in, it truly feels like you've landed on another planet. This expansive valley was formed by a significant geological fault over 30 million years ago. Even the stars bow down to this land, the Bedouins poetically say. They hold this region in deep reverence. It has been their ancestral territory since time immemorial, recognized now as a World Heritage Site. They reside in traditional tents, skillfully woven by hand from goat's wool and camel hair. I've been welcomed as a guest by the Bedouin sheikh, the respected chieftain of this tribe. The rhythmic sound of the coffee mortar signals a warm invitation. For the Bedouins, coffee is much more than just a beverage. It first arrived with the trade caravans originating from Yemen. There, Sufis used it to maintain their focus during their profound nighttime devotions. An entire, rich ceremonial culture surrounds the preparation and drinking of coffee. Assalamu alaikum, and my name is Chris. This is Sheikh Abu Nasser, the esteemed chieftain of the tribe, and his brother, who also serves as his deputy. Abu Nasser, how long has this tradition of brewing coffee been present here? We have been preparing coffee for thousands upon thousands of years. It's a vital and important legacy passed down from our ancestors. You will find coffee being brewed in absolutely every household. Drinking it is a cherished and valuable ritual for us. Coffee signifies far more than just a simple symbol of hospitality. Business agreements, important negotiations, resolving family problems. Absolutely nothing significant happens without sharing coffee, even within the immediate family circle. You drink 3 cups according to the Bedouin custom. The first cup is for your soul, the second is for your sword, and the third cup is because you are a welcomed guest. It is here that the nomadic tribes who traversed this area 3,500 years ago depicted their world, showing themselves as hunters, of course, but also illustrating the domesticated animals without which life in this particular part of the world would have been virtually impossible. We can observe here not only images but also ancient inscriptions. Inscriptions dating back to the 3rd century before Christ serve as a powerful reminder that a rich literary culture, the culture of writing, possesses a long and deep tradition in this very place. I am meeting with the Bedouin guide, Ali Muhammad, who is explaining the significance of this important cultural site to me and how he is upholding the legacy of his ancestors. Ali, thank you so much for coming today. It's my pleasure, thank you. People used this specific route for camel caravans traveling between Hijaz and Arabia and all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. The caravans journeyed through our region, Wadi Rum. This particular spot here served as a vital campground. The images and writings clearly point towards the coast. Goods and writings are indicative of routes leading to the coast. Various goods were actively traded right here. Leather originating from Arabia might have been exchanged for exquisite silk or fine textiles imported from India or China, for instance. Ali, are you personally filled with pride to be able to call these ancient people your ancestors? Yes, I am exceptionally proud. We are proud Bedouins. We are the owners of camels. We used to be responsible for transporting all the goods carried in our historic caravans. Now, we have established our lives in Wadi Rum, and we are profoundly proud of our rich ancestry. When the British agent Thomas Edward Lawrence, famously known as Lawrence of Arabia, was traveling through Wadi Rum, he famously stated that he felt humbled into utter insignificance by the sheer scale of this landscape. And that sentiment resonates deeply with me. I personally find it quite difficult to depart from this truly magical place. But my next intended destination offers a significant form of consolation. I am now on my way to Petra, the ancient city millennia old, meticulously carved directly into the towering cliffs. At what was once the central heart of a crucial ancient Middle Eastern network of trade routes. The remarkable Nabataean people once flourished here. Petra served as their impressive capital, with grand palaces, sacred temples, and elaborate tombs that once lined a magnificent processional route. These are relics of a truly great past, a sophisticated civilization that, despite considerable extensive research, remains considerably shrouded in enduring mystery. The city itself could only be entered from a single specific direction. At its most constricted point, the narrow pathway measures merely 2 meters across. This exceptionally narrow access route made Petra virtually impregnable to invaders, and some descendants of this legendary ancient people still reside in the area today. Serving as a capital city for them, and that was during the 5th or 6th century BC. They do this. It was extremely famous in the olden times because back in the olden times, in the 5th century BC, there were approximately 20 people from the Nabataeans. They were living here and they had their palaces and they had their kings. Especially figures like Aretas 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they were indeed the kings of the Nabataean people. The Nabataeans migrated into the Transjordan region during the 1st century BC. Their daring caravan raids were widely feared throughout the region. Later on, they devised a more lucrative and profitable business idea, and began offering their services as escorts for caravans traveling towards the Mediterranean. They also actively engaged in significant trading activities. Isn't there something a bit surreal or even undeniably absurd about the fact that there exists an enormous city deliberately carved into the solid rock in the very middle of a vast desert? Petra eventually grew into a major metropolis primarily because it was strategically located directly along one of the world's most ancient and important trade routes, these crucial trade routes being the famed incense road. They traded incense, myrrh, and precious spices like saffron, pepper, and cinnamon. Back in those days, all of these specific items held a value equivalent to gold, and they fueled a remarkably flourishing international trade. The Nabataeans, who were somewhat analogous to the oil sheiks of the 20th century, were instrumental in transporting this highly precious cargo from the Arabian Peninsula across the desert to the Mediterranean Sea via countless camel caravans. It functioned like a sort of living pipeline. For an extended period, it was commonly believed that the Nabataeans had hidden a vast golden treasure trove within Al-Khazna, the treasury famously concealed deep within the cliffs. This persistent rumor is precisely what lent this remarkable place its popular name. However, the treasure was never actually discovered, and we now understand that in reality, this structure served as a mausoleum for a distinguished Nabataean royal family. The incredibly elaborate facade tells a compelling story of the immense power possessed by this people who steadily conquered more and more territory. At the absolute pinnacle of their immense power, the Nabataeans even successfully conquered Damascus and initiated a siege upon Jerusalem. But they had clearly overextended their ambition and pushed their luck too far. The mighty Roman Empire was having absolutely none of their territorial claims, and the Romans forcibly annexed their entire territory. The Nabataeans were subsequently reduced to the status of Roman vassals. This kingdom was then integrated as the Roman province of Petra. However, what led to the ultimate decline of this once prosperous trading hub? During the 3rd century, mercantile centers such as Palmyra in Syria emerged as formidable rivals. Furthermore, Petra experienced numerous seismic events. The precise reasons for the city's abandonment remain unknown, yet our understanding of this location's architectural features is continuously improving, as archaeologists like Georgia Chisaro conduct explorations on behalf of UNESCO. The architectural style bore a strong resemblance to the Hellenistic tradition originating from Greece. Indeed, the Nabataeans were active traders engaging in commerce with the Greeks of that era, and they adopted some of their architectural aesthetics. Naturally, indigenous elements were also incorporated. For example, the capital's design is distinctive and quintessentially Nabataean, evident in prominent structures like the monastery and also in the treasury. Currently, Petra faces significant threats from the substantial quantities of water that accumulate within the cliff crevices during periods of heavy rainfall. This persistent water erosion weakens the structures and can trigger landslides. The Nabataeans possessed the expertise to manage these challenges effectively. Proper water management was crucial, and the Nabataeans excelled at it. They were, in fact, remarkable hydraulic engineers. Consequently, they could reroute water to prevent site flooding, while also utilizing it for daily needs and storing it, again, for domestic purposes and sustenance. All these engineering marvels are still observable today. By reactivating these ancient systems, we could potentially mitigate the risk of flooding at the site. A comprehensive UNESCO initiative, involving a team of geologists, has been initiated to safeguard the Petra sites from seismic activity and the danger of falling rock fragments. Specialists are currently instructing local residents from the adjacent wadis. These individuals can assist the missions in preserving this World Heritage Site, for which they feel a profound sense of ownership. The sophisticated engineering knowledge of the Nabataeans is now being reintroduced into practice here. Observe these channels we've discovered. The channels require repair or restoration to manage water flow, as some water seeping toward the wall causes damage, necessitating preservation of the structure. Implementing a control and management strategy for the water is essential. Wonderful, thank you so much. And you can examine the area through here, correct? Yes, absolutely. Certainly. This method is also used to identify loose rock sections that are on the brink of detaching and causing harm during subsequent storms. Employing these specialized techniques allows for the encasing and stabilization of precarious rocks. Completing this undertaking will require many years, but ultimately, it will contribute to the preservation of this World Heritage Site for future generations. How many securing anchors are installed here? This structure is a human construction, yet it appears to have naturally emerged from the surrounding stone. Architecture harmoniously integrated with its natural surroundings. Jordan is a land filled with numerous marvels. I'm now traveling towards the desert east of Amman, which is home to this exceptional site, Qusr Amra, constructed in the 8th century AD. Caliph al-Walid ibn Yazid, a prominent figure of the powerful Umayyad dynasty, commissioned the building of this modest pleasure retreat. But why choose this specific location, in the midst of a desert, where one might only expect to encounter a few nomadic families as neighbors? During the Middle Ages, German emperors journeyed between various regions, and the caliphs of the Arab world engaged in similar extensive travel. They would relocate their entire courts whenever they had to journey, in order to assert their authority over the diverse Bedouin tribes within their often vast territories. This charming spot, a small desert palace, occupies an area roughly equivalent to a typical three-room dwelling, approximately 80 square meters. Yet, within this space resided an entire world. The realm of the Umayyads, who were the inaugural influential rulers in Islamic history. The frescoes adorning this chamber are unparalleled. They were applied to wet plaster. The artwork illustrates the enjoyable, hedonistic lifestyle characteristic of an early Islamic court. You might be wondering, does Islam strictly prohibit the visual representation of living beings? It is indeed true that many Muslims today believe that, as God is the sole creator, no artist possesses the right to emulate that divine act of creation. Whether this directive can be unequivocally deduced from the Quran remains a subject of debate. By the time the prohibition of imagery began to be enforced in the late 8th century, the extravagant celebrations of Caliph al-Walid II's court had long since passed. As for the activities that took place in this bathhouse back then, I shall leave that to your imagination. These frescoes provide exceptional insights into early Islamic artistry. An inscription states, "May Allah bestow virtue upon al-Walid ibn Yazid." There might have been a reason for this sentiment. In any event, it is evident that al-Walid had his pleasure palace constructed while he was still a prince, and he certainly utilized it. Archaeologist Ramel Garib possesses an intimate familiarity with this site. Ramel Garib, archaeologist, Damascus. This location is unique. It was not intended for public access. It was exclusively for the caliph, who held authority over this region and the capital in Damascus. They would journey here to the desert for leisure, for hunting, and for interactions with the Bedouin or tribal groups residing throughout this area. Therefore, this was a highly private establishment. Certain depictions suggest a Christian influence, particularly concerning the figures of Jesus or ancient imagery. However, it's also straightforward to note that the artisans residing here created similar imagery for churches, whether in Jerusalem, Damascus, Amman, or across the region. Thus, the same artists were responsible for these frescoes. Over the years, the frescoes have undergone restoration utilizing specialized methods. However, an astonishing discovery had already been made back in the 19th century. Among the depicted figures are the Emperor of China, Roderick of Spain, the King of the Goths, and the King of Ethiopia. The Caliph evidently regarded these monarchs as his equals. Nevertheless, pride often precedes a downfall. Al-Walid's rule lasted for merely 1 year, after which he was deposed and subsequently assassinated. It appears the Caliph viewed these leaders as equals. However, excessive pride often precedes ruin. Al-Walid's time in power was short, lasting only a single year, and subsequently, he was deposed and murdered, and that marked the beginning of the end for the Umayyad dynasty. This desert palace was abandoned forever. It remained as a witness to an ancient heritage, preserved here as though it were locked away in a vault. I'm on my way to visit what remains of the hub of one of the great civilizations of the ancient Middle East. Long before there were great empires in Europe, Persian King Darius founded the ceremonial capital city of his empire in 520 BC, Persepolis. He found the perfect location in Persia's mountainous south. The old Persians called it Parsar. Persepolis was its Greek name. Little remains of its palaces and temples on this rocky 15-hectare plateau, but you sense that this was once the headquarters of an imperial power. Even the ruins are awe-inspiring, and this is how Persepolis looked in Darius's day. In the center was the Apadana, the king's audience hall. His residence was next to that, as were smaller palaces for the members of the royal court. The decisions made in this place had a lasting impact on the history of the world. The Persian Empire continued to expand, subjugating growing numbers of people. Conquered peoples sent envoys to Persepolis once a year, and they were always warmly received. King Darius and his successors were not arrogant in victory. The delegation sent by the 28 conquered nations entered the city of Persepolis through this gate of all nations. The Persian Empire was the largest the world had ever seen up until that point. Around 500 years before Christ, the empire comprised 44% of the global population at the time and had extended from Egypt in the west through Turkey and all the way to Afghanistan and Pakistan in the east. The Gate of All Nations was an advertisement of the empire's pretensions. It opened like a large friendly door to accept the envoys of other nations that were now a part of the Greater Persian Empire. Once they passed the gate, they were permitted to climb the stairs to the audience hall, just like the Persian nobles. On the day of the Persian New Year, Nowruz, delegations from all 28 countries climbed these steps up to the palace to pay tribute to the king. We can still picture it now as though we were watching a film. The Arabs with a camel, the Carians or Sarangians with weapons and a car, the Libyans with a goat and cart, the Ethiopians with a jug and ivory. All of them came here to honor the King of Kings. At the eastern stairs of the Apadana Palace, you can still make out the courtiers and the incredibly detailed reliefs. They're over 2,500 years old. Some archaeologists believe that the emperor invited Greek artists to create these depictions. The differences between the delegations and their cultures are clearly visible. These images show only harmony and peace. There are no representations of strife or war. To be immortalized in a relief in this most sacred of places was considered an honor naturally, but it was also a clear declaration, set in stone literally, that these peoples owed the Persian king their undying obedience and service. All delegations had to report to the ruler. This was how he held together an empire made up by such diverse parts of the ancient world. And the monumental Apadana was the place where they all came together, the center of the king's empire. This was the seat of imperial rule, and in the conquered territories governors known as satraps were installed, just like the Romans 1,000 years later. You might be thinking, but there is one important difference here. The Roman emperors wanted their subjects to identify with Rome, to become Roman. The Persians, too, were absolute rulers. They referred to themselves as Shahanshah, or King of Kings. But unlike the Romans, they permitted diverse religions and cultures in their empire. In fact, they were proud of that diversity. Naturally, they ruled with an iron fist, but that iron fist was wearing kid gloves, so to speak. In October 1971, the Shah at the time, Reza Pahlavi, celebrated the 2500th anniversary of the Persian monarchy in Persepolis. He invited monarchs and presidents from around the world to the grandiose festivities as though he were pretending to be Darius I. Everybody had an active role in Achaemenid culture. No nation was dead during the Achaemenid period. It appears that everyone was in constant interaction and cultural exchange. If we were to pinpoint the major foundations that helped the formation of this civilization, it appears that the relative freedom established at that time facilitated all those interactions and cooperations. Therefore, each culture was given the chance to show what it had to offer. In that sense, the Great Audience Hall and its columns are still an important part of many Iranians' identity, despite or perhaps because of the fact that they represent a time before Islam had come to this country. This is another reason why, after the Islamic Revolution in 1979, The Ayatollahs wanted to tear out the last roots of the monarchy and finally raze Persepolis to the ground. But they were prevented from doing so. UNESCO named Persepolis a World Heritage Site in the same year, and the Iranians' pride helped to preserve this place. Of course, the Persians weren't merely kind-hearted philanthropists. If they had been, they wouldn't have waged bloody wars or conquered so many nations. But when Cyrus the Great took Babylon, he did something that no conqueror before him had ever attempted. He refused to create a regime of fear or to enslave his new subjects. He tolerated all of their customs, traditions, and languages. And he freed the Jews from Babylonian captivity and ensured that they could return to Jerusalem and rebuild their ruined temples. With this act, Cyrus the Great earned himself a place in the Old Testament of the Bible. And it was in Babylon too that a more than 2,000-year-old object was discovered, which, at first glance, looks like a terracotta rugby ball. But the engravings on this object, known as the Cyrus cylinder, are actually something like the first charter of human rights. The cylinder has been compared to the English Magna Carta or the American Constitution. The cylinder reads, "They are forged in war and they rule by force." However, to endure, an empire must also win the loyalty of numerous groups, spanning multiple ethnicities, languages, and faiths. Persepolis still serves as a potent symbol of one of history's most dominant global empires, and it's a source of great pride for Iranians who recall their nation once sheltering this refined ancient civilization, a culture whose descendants carried on into modern times. Here in Persepolis, inscriptions are found everywhere across the ancient structures, originating from various historical eras. This particular marking dates back 1,700 years, stemming from the Sassanid period and commemorating the visit of one of the king's regional governors, a man named Shapur. The trip he made to Persepolis roughly 1,700 years ago. Naturally, he intended through this inscription to associate his name with the grandeur and significance of this location. Conversely, here we observe an inscription from the 19th century, specifically from 1876, when the sovereign of that era, Nasreddin Shah, visited Persepolis. This inscription commemorates his presence, but what is striking about this particular marking is that in 1979, amidst the Islamic Revolution, the name of that sovereign, Nasreddin Shah, was deliberately erased. It was chiseled out by a proponent of the revolution. Similarly, the same fate befell the title Shahenshah, meaning King of Kings. Following that revolution, this specific individual, Nasreddin Shah, became a non-person. He was no longer acknowledged. The intent was to obliterate any memory of him. He was deemed insignificant. Then, during the early stages of the First World War, Sergeant Lucas of the 21st Lancers etched his name into global history with this remarkably simple piece of graffiti. It is the simultaneous presence of all these temporal layers within a single site that is profoundly captivating, almost to the point of causing dizziness. The past splendor of Persepolis was already fading when Alexander the Great conquered the forces of Darius III in 331 BC. Alexander advanced into Persia and committed an ultimate act of destruction upon entering Persepolis, setting the city's magnificent structures ablaze. It is widely thought that this was done in retaliation for the partial devastation of Athens' Acropolis by the Persian forces. During the 18th century, Tehran, situated in the country's northern region, was designated the capital and the royal residence. Golestan Palace, with its expansive grounds, served as the official center of the monarchy. At first glance, this location appears to be a tribute to the ancient Near East. However, a new epoch was dawning. Before long, the nation would transition from being called Persia to Iran, signifying the land of the Aryans, a supreme race. This conveyed a message to the rest of the world, a world to which Iran was increasingly directing its focus. For a duration of 2,500 years, The integration of diverse cultures was a defining characteristic of the Persian Empire throughout its various incarnations. In 1848, upon Shah Nasir ad-Din's ascension to the throne, a new element was introduced: Western culture. The Shah held a strong affinity for travel to Western Europe and was resolved to embed its cultural practices within his Iranian homeland. Indigenous Persian influences were relegated to a secondary status, and Tehran's Golestan Palace stands as a compelling emblem of a cultural transformation that would meet a calamitous conclusion in the 20th century. The tens of thousands of mirrors adorning this UNESCO World Heritage Site imbue it with an exotic allure, yet the architectural design was inspired by the styles of English and French stately homes. This palace represents a fusion of all that the constructors had observed during their extensive European journeys. Detached from their own heritage, they aspired to achieve cultural parity. English artworks and French ceramic ware were considered essential. We are now in the throne room where, in 1967, Shah Reza Pahlavi crowned himself emperor, and his consort Farah became the first empress in Iranian history. In doing so, she later recounted, he elevated all women in Iran to the status of empresses. The monarch, a decisive and autocratic leader, initiated reforms that did not sit well with the highly devout segments of his populace. Islam was also experiencing a period of resurgence and intensification within the nation, and many Iranians perceived the Shah's inclination towards the West as a threat to their deeply held values. This trend had already commenced under the Shah's father, who also bore the name Reza and occupied these chambers. I cannot help but ponder the reactions of devout Muslims to depictions such as this. Consider, for instance, the religious scholars who were also regularly invited to state functions. And then, the revolution occurred in 1979. While numerous factions supported the revolution, it was ultimately the religious elements that gained ascendancy in the new administration. The Shah and his family departed the country, and Ayatollah Khomeini reshaped Iran into a strictly theocratic state. Persia had previously assimilated Islam, infusing it with Persian characteristics. Now Islam absorbed Iran. The Imam's name and likeness remain ubiquitous throughout the Islamic Republic. The plaza situated before the Jame Mosque in Isfahan was renamed in honor of Khomeini. The city's age-old customs were integrated into the new order of clerical governance. However, historical records can never be entirely expunged. When the French explorer Jean Chardin visited Persia in 1666, he documented finding himself in the most prosperous and thriving empire globally, a captivating locale replete with extravagance, yet transcending mere Oriental fantasy. Isfahan was strategically situated along the Silk Road, facilitating trade between Persia and India, China, Central Asia, and Byzantium. This effectively functioned as the world's inaugural common marketplace. The meticulously developed network of roadways perfectly complemented the ports of the Persian Gulf. Alongside Constantinople and Cairo, Isfahan emerged as one of the planet's most advanced urban centers in the 17th century, featuring impressive bridges and bustling bazaars, alongside verdant gardens and grand palaces. The core of Isfahan is a public square, and not just any ordinary one. It is reputed to be the largest in the world, extending the length of 5 soccer fields. This UNESCO World Heritage Site narrates the story of the city's period of greatest prosperity. Its commencement dates to when Shah Abbas I designated Isfahan as his capital in 1598. He summoned skilled architects and talented artists from every part of the realm, a domain that already boasted over 2,000 years of history. There was an abundance of existing resources to draw upon. He was not precisely beginning from nothing. From this expansive, airy balcony, Shah Abbas could observe his entire city, which he envisioned as a paradise. He referred to this vast plaza in the city's center as the reflection of the world. Directly opposite stood his personal place of worship, to the right lay the immense royal mosque, and to the left was the entrance to the marketplace he enjoyed frequenting unescorted, without any security detail. Isfahan was a secure environment during that era. The city did not even possess a correctional facility. The sheer number of mirrored surfaces lends this UNESCO World Heritage Site an exotic mystique, but the architectural aesthetic was developed in emulation of Shah Abbas I successfully established Isfahan as a global hub for arts, crafts, scholarship, and commerce. Here we see the Shah accompanied by his royal entourage. Few before or after him have been so passionately esteemed within this nation. Iranians continue to marvel at the expansive artworks in his garden palace, and the residents of Isfahan remain proud of the achievements under his reign. The rich traditions of craftsmanship are still vibrant and thriving within the bazaar. Shah Abbas genuinely enjoyed conversing with people. He would observe the artisans at their work, including weavers, textile dyers, and glass artisans, with a particular fondness for metalworkers. During the late 2nd and early 1st millennia before Christ, metalworking artistry was already flourishing across Persia. This specific method is recognized as halamzani, which involves engraving intricate designs onto silver, copper, or brass plates. Nearly every one of these items features incredibly detailed patterns. Do these designs carry a particular significance, or are they purely decorative? Not at all. These are traditional patterns originating from ancient Persepolis. For instance, this depiction represents an ancient Persian king, Darius. Indeed, accompanying him are his soldiers and the divine figure Ahura Mazda. Isfahan stands as a prominent center for metalwork and engraving, alongside numerous other crafts. What makes this city such a crucial hub for artisanal production? How did it attain this status? The reason is that Isfahan has historically been the seat of great Iranian rulers. The primary route connecting various parts of the globe traversed through Isfahan, making it a nexus for trade. People and goods from across the globe converged in Isfahan, where all manner of crafts and other items could be discovered. This is how Isfahan evolved into a cosmopolitan metropolis. Shah Abbas also commissioned the construction of this very bridge. Individuals from diverse cultural backgrounds crossed it to enter the city. Muslims, Jews, Zoroastrians, Christians, and followers of other beliefs coexisted peacefully in this locale. Even today, Isfahan continues to exude an atmosphere of tolerance and vitality. In this very spot, Isfahan continues to exude tolerance and vibrancy even now. During Abbas's era, the bazaar symbolized commerce, the palace represented authority, and the mosque embodied faith. Presently, the 11th century Jame Mosque is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is considered the foundational mosque of all mosques in Iran and the largest within the nation. Each successive leader throughout the centuries expanded and enhanced it further, dedicating additions to the glory of Allah. The outcome is truly awe-inspiring. The Shah, who coincidentally was born in the same year as the astronomer Johannes Kepler and the artist Caravaggio, invited skilled artisans and creators from all corners of the earth to Isfahan. They brought cobalt and indigo dyes from India and China, utilizing a proprietary kilning method to produce the exquisite blue seen in the glazed pottery and mosaic works. Verses from the Quran are artfully integrated with designs inspired by nature. The Quran perceives the natural world as a text through which God communicates with humankind. This offers another perspective on why gardens hold such a significant place in Persian culture. Key design elements include the interplay of light and shadow that accentuates flora, gazebos, and stonework. Gardens were so integral to Persian culture that the ancient Persian term paradata, which served as a synonym for garden, eventually gave rise to the word for paradise in numerous other languages. The Persians essentially pioneered the concept of the enclosed, meticulously planned garden, with its elements influencing countless other societies. This practice traces back to Cyrus the Great, who had gardens cultivated around all of his palaces in the 6th century BC. These served as elaborate private sanctuaries, but also as emblems of his power and grandeur. Persian gardens are designated as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Even Marco Polo described them as a celestial realm where the world's finest fruits flourished, and where the waterways that meandered through them flowed with milk, honey, wine, and water. I must admit, I did not encounter the water channels that Marco Polo spoke of. Similar to many Europeans of that period, the Venetian merchant embellished his accounts of the East with imaginative fabrications. Today, our perception of the Middle East is largely shaped by media coverage focusing on extremism, political oppression, and widespread displacement. In this era of increasing division, UNESCO World Heritage holds even greater importance. It serves as a reminder not of our differences, but of our shared humanity. In his collection titled West Eastern Divan, influenced by the Persian poet Hafez, the German author Johann Wolfgang von Goethe penned verses that still resonate deeply after 2 centuries. If you possess true self-awareness and understand another's inner world, then you will grasp that the East and West are intrinsically connected. My journey is taking me to the remote settlement of Yazd, situated in the arid core of the country. Approximately 1/6 of Iran is characterized by desert landscapes, and its deserts are renowned as the most intensely hot and dry regions within the nation. Humidity is minimal, rainfall is infrequent, temperatures are extremely high during summers and frigid and parched in winters. Nevertheless, these desert territories possess significant natural beauty. Certain expanses are primarily characterized by sand dunes. The deserts found in Central Asia and the Indian subcontinent are predominantly sandy. However, the most extensive undeveloped region is located on the Iranian plateau in southeastern Persia. Yazd's strategic placement in the midst of a desert has provided it protection from conflicts for millennia. When the armies of Genghis Khan swept through Persia, artists and thinkers sought sanctuary here. The historic layout and design of this adobe city have secured its designation as a World Heritage Site. The city of Yazd is situated in the Dasht-e Desert, in proximity to the ancient routes for spices and silk. The inhabitants here devised inventive methods to manage with the limited resources available in a desert environment. Water is delivered to the city through an intricate network of conduits and channels. To date, modernization has largely bypassed this remarkable city. This place will genuinely make you feel as though you've stepped back in time. Established adjacent to an oasis nearly 3,000 years ago, Yazd ranks among the world's oldest continuously inhabited urban centers. Its architectural style is perfectly suited to the scorching climate prevalent here in the central desert. Even in contemporary times, many structures are built using sun-dried clay bricks, and the city's inhabitants continue to benefit from the ancient wind catchers erected atop residences and above water reservoirs. These elements function as an integral part of an age-old system for climate control. It's a remarkably ingenious design, and I'm keen to examine it more closely. The distinctive wind towers rise prominently above the cityscape, defining its silhouette. It is quite warm outdoors, measuring 36 degrees Celsius in the shade. Yet here, the temperature is comfortably cool. What is the reason for this? It is due to the interplay of water and wind. This structure essentially functions as a massive architectural device for heat exchange. Cooled air descends through the tower. It's further cooled by its touch with the water surface, and the warm air within the building ascends via a thermal current, exiting through this section of the structure. Here's how it operates. The water needed for the setup originates from the tall mountains nearby. Situated beneath Yazd's Jumeirah Mosque is an entry point to a system of conduits built ages ago in the 5th century, which supplies the city with its water. It's an engineering marvel. A vast network of these channels, identified as qanats, spreads out like a spiderweb from Yazd into the surrounding areas. This very system also became the accepted method in other regions of Iran quite early. This site is also recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Location. Water is gathered within qanats situated outside the city limits of Yazd, near Yazd, close to the adjacent mountains where precipitation is more common. The qanat system functions with remarkable steadiness. There are only minimal changes in water flow from one year to the next. In this arid location, a consistent water supply represents an almost miraculous accomplishment. Yazd is included on the UNESCO World Heritage List because the urban area and its vicinity represent an exceptional illustration of a traditional settlement. It reflects the interplay between humanity and the natural environment in a desert setting, and importantly, it remains largely intact both architecturally and culturally. Presently, Yazd continues to be a significant hub for a faith that began almost 3,000 years ago and is believed to have been established by Zarathustra, a poet and thinker from Persia. There's some discussion regarding his actual existence, yet the doctrines of the Zoroastrian religion persist to this day. They emphasize the struggle between good and wrong, between illumination and obscurity. It is foretold that righteousness will ultimately triumph over malevolence on the day of judgment. Until that time, individuals can intentionally choose to follow the correct path, the way of truth. Zoroastrianism espouses 3 core principles: positive thoughts, positive speech, and positive actions. Mozart captures these concepts in his most renowned opera, The Magic Flute, when Sir Astro sings, "Within these sacred halls, vengeance is unknown, and should a person falter, love guides their duty." It is said that Zarathustra watches over a sacred flame in the Zoroastrian temple which has been burning without interruption for 1,550 years, serving as a symbol of light and benevolence. Alongside the temples, the landscape is dotted with structures called Dhamma, also known as Towers of Silence, which are the most distinctive architectural manifestations of Zoroastrian belief. One tenet of Zoroastrianism mandates the preservation of the earth's purity. Consequently, to prevent contamination of the soil, the deceased were placed in these towers of silence located outside the city limits. Within these circular stone enclosures, their remains were exposed to the natural elements and to birds of prey that consumed the flesh from their bones. The towers remained in use until the 1970s, at which point the practice was finally prohibited, officially for sanitary considerations, according to the authorities. However, the Zoroastrian faith continues to thrive in Iran. As I depart from this extraordinary nation, I am reminded of a verse from a poem by Rumi, the esteemed Persian poet of the 13th century. Far beyond our established ideas of religious correctness and error, a clearing exists. I will meet you there. When the spirit finds rest in that meadow, the world becomes too vast for utterance. Here, a Muslim poet suggested that the basis of spirituality was not found in a particular religious doctrine, but rather in the empathy and affection shared among people. This idea seems revolutionary even today. Rumi conceived it 700 years ago. For contemporary Europeans, the Middle East is perceived as a region of political conflict and also as an imagined realm of sensuousness and abundance. What we actually encounter are the remnants of significant empires and societies, along with political cultures shaped and divided by faith. UNESCO World Heritage Sites are valuable because they reveal to us what has endured through time. These locations evoke a world characterized by variety and sometimes by acceptance. They are sites of remembrance, but perhaps also serve as starting points for a more promising tomorrow. My thanks to you.